So basically, I've been working night shift at one of those big retail stores for almost 4 years now. Not going to name which one specifically, but it's one of the major chains. I know what you're thinking. A 28-year-old guy stocking shelves overnight isn't exactly winning at life, right? That's exactly what my family thinks too. Some background. My family is obsessed with status, like obsessed. My dad owns a successful real estate business that my sister Isabella, 26, joined right after college. Mom doesn't work, but she's on like 6 different charity boards and spends her time at country club lunches talking about her accomplished children, meaning just my sister. I was always the disappointment because I dropped out of business school after 2 years. They never let me forget it. What they don't know is that I've been quietly building something on the side while working this dead-end job. But we'll get to that. Last week was my 28th birthday. I didn't tell anyone at work, didn't celebrate, just a normal shift. Around 10 p.m., I was restocking the cereal aisle when I heard this familiar voice echoing through the store. Connor! Connor! Where are you hiding? My blood literally went cold. It was my mom, in the store, at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. What the actual fuck? I peeked around the end cap, and there she was. Designer purse, perfect hair, looking completely out of place among the late-night shoppers in their sweatpants. And right behind her was Isabella, holding up her phone, obviously recording. I could see that shit-eating grin she always has when she thinks she's better than someone. I thought about hiding in the back room, but honestly, what's the point? They just make a bigger scene. So I pushed my cart around the corner and said, hey, asked what they were doing here. Mom's face did that thing where she tries to look concerned but is actually just disgusted. She started going off immediately. Still working retail? You're 28 years old, Connor, living like trash. Your father and I didn't raise you to stock cereal at night. People were staring. My coworker Devin was frozen at the other end of the aisle. My manager Shirley was speed-walking over with that customer situation look on her face. Isabella circled around me with her phone, narrating like some fucked-up wildlife documentary. Look, everyone, my brother the overnight stalker, living his best life pushing carts at 10 p.m. 4 years of this after dropping out of college. Dad's so proud. I just stood there. Didn't say anything, which apparently pissed Mom off even more because she grabbed my cart and tried to pull it away from me. I held on and she let go suddenly, making me stumble back. Isabella laughed and kept filming. Then Mom did something I still can't believe. She walked over to the customer service desk, reached over when the employee wasn't looking, and grabbed the store intercom microphone before anyone could stop her. Attention shoppers, this failure stalking your Lucky Charms is my son. 28 years of wasted life. Can't even get a real job. Shirley finally reached her and snatched the mic back, telling her she needed to leave immediately. Mom just smiled that cold smile and said loud enough for everyone to hear that she wasn't finished. Isabella knocked into my cart hard enough to tip it, sending boxes of cereal across the floor. I make more in a day than you make in a month, Connor. Even the cart pushers think you're pathetic. We saw them laughing at you in the parking lot. That was bullshit. The cart guys are my friends. We grab breakfast after shift sometimes. Mom's final announcement as security finally showed up. Your father's writing you out of the will today. You get nothing, no house, no money, no family. You have 1 hour to call and beg. After that, you're dead to us. They left, Mom still screaming that I had 1 hour. Isabella still recording. The automatic doors closed behind them, and the store went weirdly quiet. Shirley asked if I was okay, if I needed to take a break. Devin started picking up the cereal boxes. I just shook my head and kept working. Actually, smiled a little to myself, which confused the hell out of them. See, my birthday wasn't just any birthday. My grandfather, my mom's dad, passed away 6 years ago. He built the family business from nothing. And unlike my parents, he actually valued hard work over appearances. He and I were close. He saw through my mom's bullshit and my sister's fake perfect act. What my family doesn't know is that I've spent the last 4 years working with Grandpa's lawyer, documenting how they've been misusing the family trust that he set up. Apparently, Mom and Dad have been borrowing from it for years to maintain their lifestyle. The country club memberships, Isabella's ridiculous car, the vacation house that they pretend they bought themselves. All technically illegal since the trust had specific terms. The trust was supposed to be divided among all grandchildren when we turned 28, starting with me, the oldest. But only if we showed dedication to honest work and family values for at least 3 years before that birthday. Working retail for 4 years definitely qualifies as honest work according to the trust language. I didn't call them after their little scene. Didn't text. Just finished my shift, went home to my small but comfortable apartment, and went to sleep. At exactly 2:47 a.m., my phone exploded, like non-stop notifications. I have them on Do Not Disturb, but my phone will ring for repeated calls from the same number. First was Mom. What did you do to us? The house, the cars. Connor, answer your phone right now. Then Isabella. The bank called Dad. They're saying our accounts are frozen? I'm sorry about tonight, okay? I take it all back. Please call me back. Dad, who hadn't even been at the store. Son, we need to talk. Right now. Please, this is serious. Even my uncle, Dad's brother, texted, whatever they did, you're right to be pissed. But call me tomorrow. We should talk before this gets worse. I turned my phone off and went back to sleep. Best night's rest I've had in years. This morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls and about 100 texts. Apparently, the family lawyer had delivered the paperwork at midnight. All assets connected to the trust are frozen pending review. The review that I triggered by documenting years of misuse. My mom showed up at my apartment building but couldn't get past the security door. Left a note saying she'd call the police if I didn't respond. For what? Being legally entitled to my inheritance? Good luck with that. Isabella's boyfriend called to say she was literally having a breakdown, and I needed to fix this immediately. I haven't responded to any of them yet. The lawyer advised me to wait until our meeting tomorrow where we'll go over everything. Turns out when you're not splurging on designer clothes and sports cars, you can save quite a bit from even a retail job. I've got enough savings to be comfortable for a while. And that side project I mentioned? It's actually a small business I've been building with my friend Rex. We're launching next month. The funny thing is, if they'd just treated me with basic respect, I probably would have shared everything with them. The trust doesn't say I have to keep it all. I could distribute it however I want. But after years of being the family disappointment and last night's public humiliation, nah. The lawyer says the family house might need to be sold to repay what they've borrowed from the trust. Isabella's car too. Couldn't have happened to nicer people. I'll update after tomorrow's meeting, and maybe after I finally respond to their texts. Should be interesting. Update 1. Thanks for all the support. A lot happened in the last 24 hours, so here's the update you asked for. So yesterday morning, I finally turned my phone back on around 9 a.m. and immediately regretted it. 53 missed calls. Over 200 texts. Voice messages that were basically just my mom screaming, and my sister blowing up my Instagram DMs with increasingly desperate messages. I ignored all of it and went to meet Mr. Hoffman, my grandfather's lawyer, at his office downtown. I've been meeting with him every few months for the past 4 years, so we're pretty comfortable with each other at this point. He's this older guy, probably in his 60s, who is my grandpa's best friend and has zero tolerance for bullshit. I should probably explain more about my grandpa and why he set things up this way. Grandpa Carl built his real estate business from literally nothing in the 70s. Started with one small property he fixed up himself, then kept reinvesting. By the time he retired, he owned like 30 commercial properties across 3 states. Unlike my parents, he drove the same Buick for 15 years and lived in a normal suburban house. He always said that money is for security, not for showing off. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of time with him. My parents were always busy with work or social stuff, and they'd dump me at Grandpa's house for days at a time. He taught me to fix things: plumbing, basic carpentry, car maintenance, practical skills my dad thought were beneath us. I was probably the only 12-year-old in my private school who knew how to replace a garbage disposal. Isabella was always Mom's favorite. She had the right look, said the right things, got perfect grades. I was more like my grandpa, practical, straightforward, not into the whole social climbing thing. That made me the family disappointment. When I dropped out of business school, my parents lost their minds. Dad told me I was throwing away my future. Mom told everyone I was taking some time off rather than admit I quit. The real reason I left was because I hated it. All those rich kids talking about how they were going to make millions without ever having worked a real job. Grandpa was the only one who supported me. He said college is great if you need it for what you want to do, but pointless if you don't. He's the one who encouraged me to try different jobs, figure out what I actually wanted. After he died 6 years ago, everything changed. Mom and Dad immediately upgraded their lifestyle. Bigger house, new cars, country club membership. Isabella got that ridiculous white sports car for her college graduation. I remember thinking it was weird since they always claimed to be careful with money before. About 4 years ago, I was helping clean out some of Grandpa's old files that had been sitting in their garage, and I found a copy of his will and trust documents. I wasn't snooping. Mom literally asked me to organize the boxes. What I found shocked me. The terms of the trust were super specific, and what my parents were doing was definitely not allowed. Basically, Grandpa left most of his money and property in a trust that would be distributed to his grandchildren, me, Isabella, and our 2 cousins from Uncle Lester, when each of us turned 28. The trust was supposed to provide some income to my mom and her brother, Uncle Lester, for basic maintenance of the properties, but not for luxury purchases. And definitely not for buying a vacation house in the Hamptons that they conveniently never mentioned to Uncle Lester. I took photos of the documents and met with Mr. Hoffman the next week. He confirmed what I suspected. My parents had been using the trust as their personal piggy bank, which was illegal. But here's the thing. Grandpa had anticipated this might happen. There was a clause that said if any beneficiary misused the funds, they'd lose their access and the first grandchild to turn 28 would become the primary trustee. That's me. Mr. Hoffman advised me to gather evidence quietly for a while. So for the past 4 years, I've been documenting everything, photographing bank statements they left out, recording conversations where they talked about using trust money, keeping track of purchases, all while working my retail job and living in my small apartment to maintain the appearance that I was still the family failure. At the same time, I started working on my actual plan. My friend Rex and I have been developing a property management app that connects landlords with local maintenance people. We've been bootstrapping it with our own money and a small investment from Rex's uncle. We're launching next month, and we already have contracts with several property companies. Anyway, back to yesterday. Mr. Hoffman showed me all the paperwork he filed at midnight on my birthday. It was beautiful. Detailed documentation of every cent my parents took, every property they leveraged, every lie they told the trust administrators. He said my evidence made the case airtight. While we were meeting, my parents and Isabella showed up at his office. They hadn't been invited, but apparently Mom's friend is Mr. Hoffman's receptionist, so they found out about our meeting. Mr. Hoffman asked if I wanted to see them, and honestly, I figured might as well get it over with. When they walked in, they looked like shit. Mom's perfect hair was a mess. Dad looked like he hadn't slept, and Isabella's eyes were puffy from crying. For people who care so much about appearances, this was not their best look. Mom immediately started in on me. "Connor, how could you do this to your family? We've given you everything. You're ruining our lives, blah, blah, blah." I just sat there while she ranted. Dad kept trying to calm her down, which just made her more hysterical. When she finally ran out of steam, I asked her one question. "Why did you come to my job and humiliate me?" She looked genuinely confused, like she couldn't understand why that even mattered. "We were trying to motivate you to do better. You're wasting your potential stocking shelves. It's embarrassing for all of us." That's when I lost it. I told her that for my entire life, nothing I did was ever good enough. I wasn't pretty enough like Isabella. I wasn't social enough. I wasn't ambitious enough. That my own mother cared more about what her friends thought of me than about my actual happiness. Dad tried to play peacemaker, saying there had been mistakes on both sides. Both sides. Like me working an honest job was somehow equivalent to them stealing millions from a family trust. Isabella finally spoke up, but not to apologize. She said that I was being dramatic, that recording me at work was just a joke, and I needed to get over myself. Then she had the nerve to ask when the accounts would be unfrozen because she had a hair appointment. Mr. Hoffman took over at that point, explaining exactly what they had done wrong and what the consequences would be. The family house would need to be sold to repay the trust. Isabella's car, too. The vacation house. Mom's jewelry. Pretty much everything they'd bought in the last 6 years. Mom started screaming that she'd sue me. Sue Mr. Hoffman. Sue everyone. That's when he played the recording. A video from the store security camera showing their entire performance, including Mom using the intercom and Isabella knocking over my cart. He explained that this sort of harassment could result in a restraining order if it continued. Dad just sat there with his head in his hands. Isabella stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. Mom left right after, calling me an ungrateful bastard on her way out. Dad stayed behind. After Mom left, he seemed different, deflated. He asked if we could talk privately, so Mr. Hoffman stepped out. That's when Dad told me something I never knew. Apparently, this wasn't the first time Mom had misused family money. Before they were married, she ran up massive debt in her parents' names. Grandpa Carl had bailed her out on the condition that Dad would keep her away from family finances. Obviously, he failed. He admitted that he knew what was happening with the trust, but was too scared of Mom's reaction to stop it. Said he was sorry for not standing up for me all these years, that he was proud of me for having the courage to do what's right, even though it meant going against family. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to forgive him, but another part remembered all the times he stood by while Mom tore me down. In the end, I told him I needed time to think. As Dad was leaving, he handed me a small key, said it was to Grandpa's storage unit that Mom doesn't know about. Told me there were things there Grandpa wanted me to have when I turned 28, but Mom had prevented him from telling me about it after Grandpa died. I haven't gone to check it out yet. Part of me is curious, but another part wonders if this is just Dad trying to manipulate me now that he knows I control the money. Mr. Hoffman says the next step is a full family meeting with the trust administrators next week. All assets will remain frozen until then. He's advising me to stay firm and not give in to any emotional appeals. Meanwhile, Isabella has been posting vague shit on social about family betrayal, and the truth will come out. She's been texting mutual friends trying to get them to pressure me into backing down. Most of them are messaging me asking what's going on. Uncle Lester called this morning. He wasn't surprised about any of this. Apparently, he's suspected for years that my parents were taking more than their share. He's coming to town for the meeting and wants to meet up beforehand to talk strategy. The weirdest part of all this is that I don't feel as satisfied as I thought I would. Don't get me wrong. Seeing the looks on their faces when they realized they were caught was pretty fucking great. But there's also this weird hollow feeling like, how fucked up is it that my own family treated me like garbage for years just because I didn't fit their image of success? Anyway, I'm going to check out that storage unit tomorrow. Not sure what to expect, but I'll update after the family meeting next week. That should be a complete shit show. Oh, and my manager Shirley called to check if I was okay, and to let me know the store banned my mom and sister from entering again. Small victories, I guess. Update 2. So I checked out that storage unit my dad gave me the key to, and holy shit, you guys. But before I get into that, let me catch you up on the absolute clusterfuck that's been happening since my last update. Remember how I said Isabella was posting vague shit on social media? Well, she went full nuclear. She posted this long-ass rant on Facebook. Who even uses Facebook anymore except for drama like this? About how I'm mentally unstable and have been planning to destroy the family for years. She literally wrote that I've always been jealous of her success and am using Grandpa's money to get revenge. The best part? She tagged like 30 family friends in it. Real classy. My phone started blowing up with messages from distant relatives and family friends I haven't talked to in years. Most were like, "What's going on?" But a few immediately took Isabella's side without even asking for my version. One of my mom's friends from the country club actually called me to say she always knew I was troubled and needed professional help. I didn't respond to any of it. My plan was to just ignore their bullshit until the family meeting with the trust administrators. But then Rex called me. Apparently, Isabella found out about our app somehow, probably from looking me up online, and showed up at Rex's apartment. She told him I was having a mental breakdown and was going to ruin our business by dragging it into family drama. She tried to convince him to buy me out of our partnership for my own good. Rex has known me since we were 10, so he wasn't buying her bullshit. He told her to leave, and she refused. Kept saying she was just trying to help and that Rex didn't know what I was really like. He had to threaten to call security before she finally left. But it gets worse. My mom found Rex's number and called him pretending to be concerned about my mental health. Said I'd been unstable since childhood and had episodes where I make up stories about people being against me. She suggested that working with me would put his investment at risk. Rex recorded the entire call, sent it to me with a text saying, "Your mom is batshit crazy, dude." I was so fucking angry I could barely see straight. They weren't just attacking me anymore. They were going after my business and my reputation. That's when I decided to stop playing defense. I went to check out Grandpa's storage unit the next day. It was this small, climate-controlled unit in one of those fancy storage places. When I opened it up, I found boxes of Grandpa's personal items, photo albums, his military service medals, collections of rare coins and baseball cards he'd been gathering since he was a kid. Things my mom had told everyone were lost in a basement flood years ago. There was also a locked filing cabinet. The key to it was in an envelope with my name on it, taped to the top of the cabinet. Inside were folders of documents, old property deeds, investment records, and most importantly, a detailed accounting of every property Grandpa owned and what happened to it after he died. This is where it gets interesting. According to these records, there were 3 properties that weren't listed in the official trust inventory that Mr. Hoffman had shown me. Properties that my parents had apparently sold shortly after Grandpa died, pocketing the money completely outside the trust. I called Mr. Hoffman immediately. He was surprised. He'd helped Grandpa set up the trust but wasn't aware of these specific properties. He asked me to bring the documents to his office right away. While I was loading the boxes into my car, I got a text from my cousin Remy, Uncle Lester's son. He sent me a screenshot of a Facebook Marketplace listing. It showed Grandpa's antique desk. The one he'd specially mentioned in his will should go to me, listed for sale by my mom. The listing had been posted that morning. I drove straight to my parents' house, used my old key that they never asked for back. Mom wasn't home, but Dad was. He looked surprised to see me, especially when I walked past him straight to Grandpa's study. The desk was gone. Dad followed me in asking what I was looking for. I showed him the marketplace listing on my phone. He looked genuinely shocked and said he had no idea Mom was selling Grandpa's things. Said she told him she was just reorganizing the study. I asked him where Mom was, and he hesitated before telling me she'd gone to meet someone about selling some old furniture. I must have looked like I was about to explode, because he quickly added that he'd text her to come home right away. While we waited, I went through the study looking for other missing items. The antique clock was gone, Grandpa's book collection, even the fucking family photos with Grandpa in them. Mom walked in about 20 minutes later and stopped cold when she saw me. She was carrying her designer purse, the one she bought with trust money. She immediately went on the offensive, demanding to know why I was in her house. I held up my phone with the marketplace listing and asked her how she could sell Grandpa's desk when she knew it was specifically left to me in his will. Her response? The will was changed before he died. You're not entitled to anything in this house. That was a straight-up lie, and we both knew it. I told her I'd just found Grandpa's storage unit and all the documents inside, including the original will and property records. She tried to grab my phone, saying I had no right to go through her father's private things. I stepped back and she nearly fell over. Dad had to catch her arm to steady her. That's when she switched tactics completely, started crying, saying how hard things had been since the accounts were frozen, how she couldn't even buy groceries. Bullshit, they have multiple credit cards. How Isabella might have to drop out of her MBA program because they couldn't pay tuition. Also bullshit. Isabella finished her MBA 2 years ago. I didn't fall for it. Told her I knew about the 3 properties they'd sold outside the trust and that Mr. Hoffman would be adding those to the legal complaint. She stopped crying instantly. Her face just hardened. She told me to get out of her house before she called the police. I reminded her it wasn't technically her house anymore since it was bought with trust money and would likely be sold to repay what they took. Dad tried to play peacemaker again, saying we could work this out as a family without lawyers. I asked him if he knew about the properties they'd sold. The look on his face told me everything. He knew. I left with a box of personal items that were mine from my old room. As I was walking out, Mom called after me that if I didn't fix this situation before the family meeting, she would make sure everyone knows what really happened with my mental problems. Said there were medical records that would prove I'm not fit to manage the trust. Another lie. I've never had any serious mental health issues or treatment, but it showed just how far she's willing to go. I drove straight to Mr. Hoffman's office with the documents from the storage unit. He was shocked by the extent of what my parents had done. The 3 hidden properties were worth over $2 million combined. The next day, Uncle Lester arrived in town. We met for lunch at this diner I used to bust tables at during high school. He looked older than I remembered. More gray hair, tired eyes. He'd driven 6 hours to be here for the meeting. He told me something interesting. Apparently, Mom had called him trying to get him on her side, claimed I was exaggerating everything and just wanted to hurt the family. Uncle Lester didn't buy it. He said he'd suspected for years that my parents were misusing the trust, especially after they suddenly bought the vacation house without telling him. Then he revealed something I didn't know. Mom had tried to get him removed as a beneficiary years ago, claiming he had a gambling problem. He doesn't. The only reason it didn't work was because Grandpa had specifically protected Uncle Lester's portion. We spent 2 hours going through all the documents I'd found. Uncle Lester recognized some of the properties I hadn't known about. Said Grandpa had bought them as investments in the 90s. He also told me that Mom had always been like this, even as a kid. She resented that Grandpa made her work in his office during summers instead of going to the country club like her friends. She'd spend her allowance on designer clothes while Grandpa drove his old car for another year. The real bombshell came when he mentioned Isabella. Apparently, my sister has been in contact with him too, but separately from Mom. She called him crying yesterday, saying she was scared about what would happen at the meeting. Said Mom had told her to lie about me if necessary, to protect their lifestyle. Isabella might actually be having second thoughts. Not enough to apologize to me directly, but enough to be uncomfortable with Mom's tactics. The family meeting is tomorrow morning. Mr. Hoffman has prepared a complete presentation of everything my parents took from the trust, including the hidden properties. He's advised me to stay calm and let him do most of the talking. Rex is coming with me for moral support, even though he doesn't need to be there. Uncle Lester will be there too, and apparently his son Remy is flying in tonight. Mom has been texting me nonstop since yesterday. First, it was threats that she'd expose my mental problems to everyone. Then it switched to bargaining, offering to let me have some of Grandpa's personal items if I'll be reasonable about the money. This morning, it was guilt, saying Dad might lose his business if this goes forward. I haven't responded to any of it. The weirdest part is that I don't even feel angry anymore, just tired and sad that it's come to this. These people are my family, but they've treated me like an enemy for years just because I didn't fit their image of success. Tomorrow is going to be intense. Mom's threatening to expose everything, whatever that means. But I've got the documents, the recordings, and the truth on my side. I'll update after the meeting. Wish me luck. Final update. It's been a wild ride these past couple weeks since my family humiliated me at work. For those just joining, my mom and sister came to my night shift job to mock me in front of everyone, not knowing I was about to control the family trust my grandfather left that they've been illegally draining for years. So the big family meeting happened yesterday morning at Mr. Hoffman's office. I got there 30 minutes early because I couldn't sleep anyway. Rex came with me for moral support, and Uncle Lester and Remy were already there when we arrived. The conference room was this huge space, with a long table and those uncomfortable leather chairs that make noise whenever you move. Mr. Hoffman had set up a projector and laid out copies of all the documents we'd found. The trust administrators, these two serious older guys in suits, were sitting at one end reviewing papers. At exactly 9:30, my parents and Isabella walked in. Mom was dressed like she was going to a fancy brunch. Designer outfit, perfect makeup, hair done. Dad looked tired as hell. Isabella was wearing sunglasses inside. Who does that? And refused to look at me. The first weird thing I noticed was that Isabella's boyfriend, Chad, was with them. He's this preppy finance bro type who's always talking about his family's connections. No idea why he was there since he's not family or involved with the trust. Mr. Hoffman started the meeting by explaining why we were all there, to address the misappropriation of trust funds and determine the path forward. Very dry, legal stuff. While he was talking, Mom kept whispering to Chad, which was annoying AF. Then Mr. Hoffman handed it over to the trust administrators, who went through a detailed presentation of exactly what my parents had taken. Over $5 million in loans that were never approved or repaid, plus the 3 properties they sold outside the trust worth another $2 million. The whole time, Mom kept making these little scoffing noises and rolling her eyes. Dad just stared at the table. Isabella was texting under the table, probably updating her followers about how unfair everything was. When they finished, Uncle Lester spoke up. He talked about how disappointed Grandpa would be to see his hard work squandered on luxury cars and vacation homes when it was meant to secure the family's future. He looked directly at Mom when he said Grandpa always worried about her spending habits even when he was alive. Mom actually laughed at that. Said Uncle Lester was just jealous because his pathetic little life didn't measure up to hers. That's when I realized Mom was nervous. She gets mean when she's backed into a corner. Always has. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. I explained how I found the documents, why I decided to enforce the trust terms, and what I hoped would happen going forward. I said I didn't want to destroy the family, just stop the misuse of Grandpa's legacy. Mom interrupted me halfway through. She stood up, slammed her hand on the table, and started in on this prepared speech about how I've always been unstable and had serious psychological issues since childhood. Said I was delusional and making up stories for attention. Then she pulled out a folder and slid it to the trust administrators. Said it contained my medical records, proving I wasn't mentally fit to manage the trust. The room got super quiet. Mr. Hoffman picked up the folder, looked inside, then handed it to me without a word. It was empty. There were no records because there was nothing to document. Mom had been bluffing. I looked at her and said, "Really? An empty folder? That's your big evidence?" She turned bright red, started stammering that the records must have been misplaced. Chad shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Dad closed his eyes like he couldn't bear to watch. That's when Isabella finally took off her sunglasses and spoke up. But instead of backing Mom up like everyone expected, she said, "Mom, this is too far. We need to stop." Mom whipped around and hissed at Isabella to shut up. Actually grabbed her arm hard enough that Isabella winced. That's when Dad did something I've never seen before. He stood up, pulled Mom's hand off Isabella, and told her to sit down and be quiet. His exact words were, "June, that's enough. The game is over, we lost." Mom looked like he'd slapped her. She yanked her arm away from him and started yelling that he was pathetic, that he'd always been weak, that this was all his fault for not controlling me better. Dad just shook his head and turned to the trust administrators. He admitted everything, that they'd been using trust money inappropriately for years, that they'd sold properties outside the trust, that they'd hidden assets, said he was tired of living a lie and watching Mom's obsession with status destroy the family. Mom completely lost it, started screaming that he was betraying her, that I had manipulated him, that she'd divorce him and take everything. Knocked over a water pitcher reaching for him, soaking all the documents on the table. Mr. Hoffman called security. 2 guys came in and escorted Mom out while she was still screaming threats at everyone. The whole room was stunned silent. Chad awkwardly stood up and said he had to go check on her. But before he left, he looked at Isabella and said, I think we need to talk later. The look on his face said everything. He was done. After that drama bomb, the meeting continued without Mom. The trust administrators said, given the evidence, they had no choice but to enforce the original terms of the trust. I would be named the primary trustee, responsible for managing all assets and distributing funds according to Grandpa's wishes. Dad just nodded and accepted everything. He looked relieved, like a weight had been lifted. He asked what would happen to their house, and Mr. Hoffman explained it would need to be sold to repay the trust. Dad just asked for time to find an apartment. Isabella was weirdly quiet through all this. When everything was wrapping up, she finally looked at me directly and asked if I hated her. Not in a dramatic way, just a simple question. I told her the truth, that I was angry about the store incident and years of being treated like a failure, but that I didn't hate her. She nodded and said she needed time to process everything. As everyone was leaving, Dad asked if he could talk to me privately. We went to a small office down the hall. He sat down heavily in a chair, looking suddenly much older. He apologized, not just for the recent stuff, but for years of letting Mom dictate how I was treated. Said he always knew I was more like Grandpa, practical, straightforward, not impressed by flashy things. But he didn't stand up for me because it was easier to go along with Mom's vision. Then he told me something I never knew. Apparently, he came from a poor family and met Mom when he was working as a valet at her parents' country club. She was this rich, beautiful girl who noticed him, and he couldn't believe his luck. After they got married, he was so afraid of losing her that he gave in to everything she wanted, even when he knew it was wrong. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me felt bad for him, but another part was still angry that he let Mom treat me like shit for years. He didn't ask for forgiveness or try to justify what they'd done, just said he hoped someday we could have some kind of relationship again, and that he was going to get help for his issues with confrontation. Then he handed me Grandpa's watch that he'd been wearing, said it should be mine now. When I left the building, Rex was waiting outside. We grabbed lunch at this diner nearby, and I told him everything. He laughed his ass off at the empty folder stunt, said my mom should have at least put some fake papers in it if she was going to try that move. We talked about our app launch next month and how none of this family drama would affect our plans. If anything, having access to the trust means that we can scale up faster than we planned. Later that afternoon, Uncle Lester and Remy came over to my apartment. We went through more of Grandpa's stuff from the storage unit, swapping stories about him. Turns out, Remy had been storing some of Grandpa's tools that Mom had tried to throw out years ago. He brought them back for me since he knew I was the one who used to work on projects with Grandpa. Around 7 p.m., I got a text from Isabella asking if we could meet tomorrow. Just said she had some things she wanted to say to me directly. I agreed to coffee at this place near my apartment. Then I got the weirdest message from Chad, Isabella's boyfriend. He asked if I could recommend a good real estate agent because he was backing out of buying a house with Isabella. Apparently, seeing how my family operated had given him serious second thoughts about joining it. I also got an email from Mr. Hoffman saying Mom had shown up at his office after hours, demanding to see him. His security didn't let her in, and she left after making a scene in the lobby. He's documenting everything in case we need a restraining order. Dad sent a single text saying he'd moved into a hotel and would be filing for divorce. Not asking for my support or approval, just informing me. Mom hasn't contacted me at all since the meeting. Her Instagram still shows pictures of their house and luxury vacations with captions about living her best life. Posts from before everything blew up. It's like she's pretending nothing has changed. As for me, I quit my retail job. Gave 2 weeks notice even though I didn't have to. My coworkers threw me a small goodbye party with cheap cake from the store bakery. Shirley, my manager, gave me a card everyone signed saying they'd miss me, but were happy I was moving up. I'm still living in my apartment for now, even though I could afford something nicer. It's comfortable and close to downtown where Rex and I rented a small office for our business. The app launches in 3 weeks. We've already signed contracts with 5 property management companies to use it. I've hired 2 of my former coworkers who have tech backgrounds but couldn't find jobs in the field. The trust money isn't just sitting there either. I'm working with financial advisors to invest it properly, the way Grandpa would have wanted. Some will go to my cousins when they turn 28, exactly as the trust specifies. As for the family properties, most will be sold to repay what my parents took, but I'm keeping Grandpa's original house. Not to live in, it's too big for me, but to fix up the way he would have done it. Maybe I'll rent it to a family who will actually appreciate it. I don't know what will happen with Isabella tomorrow, or with Dad in the future, or if Mom will ever speak to me again. And honestly, I'm okay with that uncertainty. This whole thing has been exhausting and messy and nothing like those perfect revenge stories where everyone learns their lesson and the hero walks away feeling satisfied. Real life isn't that clean, but standing up for myself, making them face consequences for how they treated me, that part feels pretty damn good.